continuation of the November 13th, 2018 board meeting. If you're here for the potluck, you're a little bit early. But we're going to begin with the pledge of the flag, so we could all rise and join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Sean, would you please call the roll and establish quorum?
Okay, President Joe Kilren.
Present.
Vice President Don Wells.
Present.
Treasurer Frank Hennigan.
Present.
Secretary Molly Knotts is absent. She's with her husband that's going through everything right now. And Al Roper is on the phone. Al? Present. Director Marilyn Stout.
Present.
Director Jason Ward. Present. Please show that we have quorum.
Okay, quorum's established, meeting's called to order. First item on the continued agenda is the resales reserve assessment, which was tabled at the November 13th meeting. Frank, a little bit ago, advised me he'd like to make sure that all the pertinent facts are at hand before proceeding, and all board members have ample time to evaluate and consider the item. In particular, that information from reserve advisors to be completed, studied, update to be available, and to ensure that the best available information is before us and the decisions made on that. Frank, I thank you for being proactive and thinking strategically in the best interest of the community. The need for the most recent information is prudent business judgment, and the resolution remains tabled pending completion of the full reserve advisor study update for informational purposes. The update is done every 3 years, and we're on that cycle now. Sean, would you please advise what the status is on that study and when it might be able to be implemented?
Okay, Reserve Advisors is the reserve company that's done the study since the beginning. They are what I think is the largest reserve company in the United States, so they are a very good company. The study that we have allocated has every 3 years that they do an update. During that update, what they do is they'll send usually one, sometimes two engineers. What we also do is when the engineer's on site, we go through everything to update the age, and then what they do is backtrack off of that then to show you the approximated time of replacement, and then back off of that, which sets your cash flow analysis. Ours this coming year in the fourth quarter hasn't been started, but the actual study will be in January.
Okay, and that will include Frank. Frank will be involved as treasurer with the finance group?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I expect when they come here, myself and the finance group, I'm going to get with them. We're going to go around with the engineers, make sure we understand it, from soup to nuts, and then make a recommendation by the full grouping. So hopefully with that, and then it'll give more time for the board to really churn through the numbers and understand it, and then for the residents. So I don't see why we can't have a few more months to understand this and really get everyone's in agreement.
And just to comment on that, thank you, Frank, for being very forward-coming with that. There's no attempt at cram down here. What is important is that we get the right information, digest it properly, and make a decision based on the best available. And that's what we plan to do. So that activity and the resolution will remain tabled until that date is available. We'll keep you posted on the progress. Next item on the agenda will be it's on the ARC.
That's what I was asking. Is this ARC or is this?
No, the reserve is going to remain tabled. We'll have discussions in the future when we have all the information.
I'm having a discussion today.
Well, it's off the table.
No, it's not off the table, Joe.
It's tabled. It
No,
hasn't been
but
brought up.
I have comments that I would like to make.
You're
I have comments that
you're welcome to at the end of the meeting, but we're going to do the ARC guidelines right now. Revised ARC guidelines.
I don't understand what.
Jim, please don't interrupt. We're not going to have that today. I'm sorry.
if we let everybody comment, everybody's gonna comment, but this is not the time for our paper.
No, it is not, it is the time.
It's tabled,
It's the
Don.
time.
Don, you're out of order.
I am not.
You're out of order.
Out of order.
I'm sorry, anyone who would like to comment further on this will be available at the future date and review this item. It's not
What are we coming here for?
Ron, can you sign up as a resident comment and we can listen to you?
Okay, revised our columns. You want to just give an overview, then we're going to have the resident comments on the ARC guidelines.
And sometimes it's going to express though, we had a meeting where everybody had the opportunity to come up to the mic. And we had, at that meeting, we had people shouting from the crowd, overstepping people that were talking. Well, the point is, ma'am, no, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for your municipality. If you did that at the Cape, you're going to be thrown out of the meeting. And
Joe doesn't let anybody else speak. He's the only one that can ever speak.
Joe had somebody in the aisle that was over talking him. And I don't care if you like or dislike a board member, but a board member, you have a president, you have a vice president, you have a secretary and a treasurer, and you respect the office, not the position. That's what it is. And you have that no matter who's up here, and I give respect to that person. The ARC things we've had.
President can't speak.
Don Wells is a member. He's on the board.
He's on the board.
Don, and let him talk.
Okay, we've been talking about ARCs now for a year. Are we going to table ARC as well?
Yes.
No, we're not going to take, we're going to do ARC right now. So we'll take comments on ARC, resident comments on ARC only. Anyone wanting to speak on ARC?
I don't even know what that is.
It was already tabled. It was already tabled. It was tabled the last time.
What is that ARC?
We haven't had no one on the board has had any input into what you're trying to do.
It was tabled last meeting.
And it was under the understanding to the board members and to the community that we would now have a chance to discuss it today.
Yes.
No, it was
That's why
tabled
I'm here.
next time pending further information. That's when it was tabled.
This is incredible to me.
Yeah. Bullshit.
What is tabled for today?
And it's continuing to be tabled based on Frank's request that he needs more time to provide information.
Then we needed to agree to that. We didn't agree to
This
that.
is already up even for them to vote on. When do we get information around this?
When it's available.
Probably to give your own board members information.
The reserve study is, to answer your question, is for January.
We're not talking about the reserve study. We're talking about the information regarding the assessment, and there's items that need to be discussed about that. It has nothing to do with the reserve study.
We're here for the continued dialogue on the proposed $1,000 increase to the sales, resales. I thought that was.
All right. ARC guidelines. The guidelines that we've gone over now have gone to the attorney. These are things that we've been putting on hold now for a while. The ARC guidelines, the board has the authority to make changes to the ARC guidelines. The council, what we did is on process, is the neighborhood liaisons went over each ARC perspective change. The ARC guidelines were then given to the results to the attorney, which then we put a completed format. Now it's going to be basically done in several stages because you have everything that we've got back from the council, but this is going to be a working document on everything. The things that are on the table for approval, I sent copies to every board member so that you have them. The first item for consideration is the accessory buildings. In the current ARC guidelines, it says owners shall secure prior DR approval prior for construction of any necessary building or permanently installed playhouses, dog houses, except accessory buildings shall meet the following criteria. An accessory building must be of the same color, material, and architectural style as the main residence of color, material, and style that is generally recognized and complementary to that of the main residence. An accessory building's roofing material shall match those of the main residence. What this allows is that you can actually create an accessory building behind a house, which hasn't been done as of yet if it matches your house. The guideline is to change that, and accessory buildings will not be permitted. Number 2 is driveways and walkways. All driveways within the neighborhood must be constructed of the same material. Driveways shall at minimum be the part that was taken out, stamped, colored, or concrete. It doesn't allow so that your driveways are mixed. Pavers, gravel, concrete, asphalt, or shell driveways are prohibited. Brick, flagstones, stepping stones, and precast pattern and exposed aggregate concrete pavers will be approved for walks and patio areas. The sentence that was added is that driveways shall not extend beyond the corner of the garage and replaced with the same material to match existing pavers. The third item was the addition under exterior wall treatments. The finish on window and flashings, common drips, and soffits must be white, was the added verbiage to that. Everything in there, the painted stucco, the painted finish, the colors, and foam materials, cementus was all left as recommended by council. The next area was flags and flagpoles. This one we actually did an amendment to our documents that you can't do this. There was a prohibiting flags or flagpoles. There's a state mandate that actually allows that oversees that. So the verbiage yard-mounted flagpoles are not permitted on any portion of the properties except that a builder may erect such flagpoles on a temporary basis at a model maintained or on the properties by such builder. That was actually removed from the guidelines. The part that's left in there is consistent with the specification. Flagpoles are permitted. Owners may also periodically attach flags not to exceed 4 by 6 inches on their house or garage with the approval of DR of Armed Forces, Memorial Day flag, Independence Day, Veterans Day, or an owner may display an official flag of the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, or Coast Guard.
You said inches.
Inches?
Yeah.
The 4 feet by 6 inches by 6 feet. So it's 4 by 6 by 6 is the flag size. The ones that we're going to look at a little bit more, which are our hot topics, are going to be trampolines. We want to be sure that the verbiage is consistent with there. There's no attempt to remove trampolines from the verbiage, so if we have trampolines, that will stay in there. But the playhouses and swing sets will stay in there as well, with the footprint to measure no more than 24 square feet. Number 24 was pools. The DR approval, the addition was that it be struck out to be an integral part of the residence. This is referring to the more of the drainage so that it's better defined. Contained within the corners of the residence, have a 12-inch mulch bed with 3-gallon plants around perimeter. Pools without a cage must have a 4-foot fence. As with the guidelines, all pools must have proper drainage and perimeter not to cause flooding. The next one was satellite dishes. Well, the problem we were having with satellite dishes is it's not so much on the dish, it's when people move that they don't remove these dishes. So it's functional dishes, non-functional dishes must be removed. Okay, storm shutters, that's under section 33. The verbiage will remain the same with the striking of storm, same color as the required exterior window color. And that will change to white for all shutters and frames that are permanently visible and must conform in style for the openings. Roll down panels can be white or earth tones. Allow them to have the choice. Solar panels was the one we have it striked out on. Additional landscape buffering may be required in order to soften the appearance of solar panels. That didn't have a clear definition in there. And with the solar panel shall be located on the rear side, roof, or home whenever possible. And with the addition of non-functional solar panels must be removed. The same context that we have houses that don't have solar panels that are functional and they're still on the house. One of the big ones was mulch. This is one that we get through here a lot. Mulches, cypress, eucalyptus, pine bark, and pine straw are approved mulches for use in Sandoval, and it was to strike out the verbiage red mulch or colored mulch are not approved materials and be replaced with black and brown are approved mulch colors. Red or other varied colored mulches are prohibited. It's got definition in there, defines the difference on the red and the black. The synthetic mulches are also prohibited. The last one was landscape pavers, walkways, and patios requires DR approval. That was added in there. The ones that are being reviewed, just for the board reference, we went through with the neighborhood reps. The neighborhood reps, and these will be run through council as well, which will do this in a two-phased approach. We'll be voting on the ones today that I just went through, but the ones for December that will also be put in here are trampolines. The neighborhoods reps, neighborhood liaisons actually voted 15-1 to 15 voted yes with restrictions on setbacks, 1 for no restrictions. So the recommendation to the board is going to be to follow on that for the trampolines. And we got into the type of restrictions. Foliage, buffering, 5 were for that, 11 against. Anchoring the trampoline, all 16 of the liaisons felt that there should be some requirement for anchoring. The setback requirements, 13 were for, 3 against. The storm maintenance requirements for removal during named hurricanes, 13 were for, 3 against. That's when we have a storm to make sure they're actually taken out. And a general insurance requirement or a general release statement, 16 were for, which corresponds to our what our insurance company is saying. The other ones on here are garage door screening. This one is, we spoke prior on the topic of board consideration for the approved door screening above a garage door. There's 12 of our reps felt no restrictions, and then 4 of them felt restrictions with possible nights or occupied garages for that screen to be closed in addition to the door. So we just have to make sure with our council that we have a thing in there that talks about the doors being closed, that it corresponds to the garage door screening. Fencing verbiage, the change to allow, this is a big one. In phase 1 and 2, you have right now that you're allowed to use 4-foot chain link fence. Phase 3 was added that allows the aluminum stock, which is done in bronze, and it was to make a consistent standard through the entire development, so that anybody that chooses to use the more high dollar fence on the aluminum has the option to do that in phase 1 and 2. That stock would be black to match the existing chain link that's in there, and 16 of our liaisons, everybody was for that. This one is one that is one that we had one of these done in here, that it becomes it's a 2-story screen enclosure. There's only one that I'm aware of in Sandoval, and there's nothing in our docs that prevent that from actually being installed again. 13 of our reps were against 2-story screen enclosures that didn't match the scheme of the neighborhoods, and only 3 were for. The last one, which we don't really have a clear answer on this, is probably going to defer to neighborhood by neighborhood, is going to be trash cans. This is one that we get probably the most complaints through our office on the trash can storage, and trying to decide what the proper buffering is. The difference, though, is we have some lots that have a 60-foot frontage where you don't have as much room to do it, and then you have some lots that are, I think, close to 90. So it's going to be more on a neighborhood definition. Not a clear direction from the Master Association policy change regarding the concerns or lot differences. Long consideration also is if Waste Pro, their contract ends in 2019, if they are going to continue as our trash company. We don't know that as of yet. But the considerations, the ones I just read, will be done with council in stage 2, and everything that I gave to the board in stage 1, the recommendation is for approval for the ARC changes.
Is there a motion to approve? Have a second? Second. Discussion? Any discussion? Comment? Okay. All those in favor of approving the ARC guidelines? Aye. Opposed? Aye. Looks like it's passed unanimously. Okay, ARC guidelines are approved. Okay, that's the two agenda items. We're gonna have.
Did Al have a comment?
Al, did you have something to say, or did you vote aye? I voted aye. Okay, thank you. I'd like to establish meeting time. Next meeting time is December, and it's a lot of schedule, so if you all could just send me your available dates, and we'll see what we can work out as to the meeting time. We're gonna need to schedule an executive meeting on a legal matter for next week, and I suggest next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Okay. What dates will you be available next week? Monday, Tuesday. Okay. Alan, for the executive session.
1 p.m. I think it's fine for me.
Okay. How about Monday or Tuesday? Are you available any time then?
No, I've already got meetings, Tuesday, I know. Monday, I might have some time in the afternoon. I'm just not sure at this point whether Monday works as well as Wednesday. How about Thursday?
That's Thanksgiving.
Oh, right. Sorry.
I don't know if we get the council's going to attend. There'll be teleconference for council attending.
Well,
Can you do
yeah,
teleconference time?
4:30. How about 2 o'clock Monday? Is that
Yeah, we can do a different time. What time are your flights? Usually, how do you do it? Are you okay for Monday?
I'm okay if it's maybe 1:30, does that work?
I think so. Let me check with council. It's going to be with council, so.
Okay.
Okay. You're not available. Can you call in all case?
I might be able to. I'm working.
Okay. All right, we'll work that out, but we need to get it set up. If not next week, it's going to have to be immediately the week before, the next week. Or
I
the
need
week.
next Saturday, so.
Okay.
I'm available that week and next week.
Okay. How about Friday? Or is Friday good for you, Don? Friday, next week.
This Friday?
No? Okay. All right, let's just go around the table, open comment. Jason, anything to say? Marilyn?
Unless Robert's rules.
Microphone.
Unless Robert's rules has changed, then that's certainly possible since the last time I looked at them. But a chair of a meeting cannot table something. It has to be a motion from one of the members and a second. There's no further discussion after the motion and second, and then there's a vote. If the vote is to table, then you table it to a date certain. If you don't table it to a date certain, it dies eventually because you just cannot table something without a date certain. And I thought when we met that the date certain was today. Therefore, I would have supported Don to speak because I thought it was on the agenda today, and obviously a lot of people thought it was on the agenda today.
It's on the agenda.
I'm very confused. I just felt like, according to Robert's rules, that a motion, again, a motion to table has to be made by a member and seconded and voted on.
Okay. Just the only comment with respect to that, it had already been tabled, and it was going to be pending further information, and Frank was gathering the information. So I think that may be the difference on it. But I'm happy, Don, you want to speak, go right ahead.
Thank you.
Al Roper also wanted to speak, and he's on the phone. He sent me a text message of what he would like to say, and I will read his comment. And it's regarding the $1,000 assessment, reserve assessment increase. While I understand the reasons behind the requested reserve contribution increase, I'm not happy with the timing of it. Notice and explanation of this requested increase should have gone out several weeks ago, allowing for sufficient discussion among the homeowners as well as the board members. I have spoken with many homeowners, and most were surprised by the proposal. In addition, a large majority of homeowners have voiced their disapproval of the increase. At this time, I cannot support the requested reserve contribution increase. And I have the following observations. I see a choice between us as a community of residents living in Sandoval. Increasing the reserve assessment fee by $1,000 amount will reduce the equity of your home and make this HOA fee a part of the negotiation process at the time of sale. Our treasurer gave us an accurate and pertinent information about the number of home sales, and I commend him for that, but it did not take into consideration who will actually be forced to pay the fee. Furthermore, this fee unfairly penalizes the younger demographics in our community who are in the prime of their lives and willing to move their families to new locations for better job opportunities. This core group is essential to help maintain a vibrant, adaptable, and modernized community. Every account that we have in Sandoval, be it operations, CenturyLink surplus, or reserves, must have a funding source. Currently, we fund operations in the CenturyLink surplus with homeowner-generated HOA fees, and the reserve fund with home sale assessments on the buyer. So you can see that the idea that there will be no HOA fee increase is false. In fact, we have already increased the HOA fee by putting the CenturyLink savings in a lockbox and not reducing the HOA fee by this amount. Realistically, this money is already available over time to meet our capital project needs. Our operations budget cannot and will not remain the same. Think of gas prices, rent fees, and hopefully our paychecks. They will continue to rise over time. The reality is that if you want something, it has to be paid by someone's pocketbook. Here in Sandoval, we are currently funding the reserve account with home sales. The economy is good and robust, it'll work. What I'm hearing is that we need to stockpile dollars for the downturn. Again, our reserves are solely funded by those coming and going. The rest of the community is immune to this cost until they want to sell and realize the impact on their asking price. I remain firmly in opposition to increasing the fee from $3,000 to $4,000 for resales. I do recommend that we immediately increase the new Taylor Morrison home sale assessment to the $3,000 level as the resale homes are. Is that a possibility? And I don't know the answer to that, but if there is, I would submit a resolution to that fact.
Yeah, I can vote for that. Basically, the Taylor Morrison assessment is written into our documents. So we take a 2/3 change of the documents, and basically it would be a document change first. The issue with that is that I think Taylor Morrison's down to 4 homes to put under contract. So
It would set the principle.
but the principle would be set after the homes were sold. So we'd spend a lot of attorneys' money and probably not get much out of it. Any other comments, questions?
I remain firmly in opposition to increasing the fee and the Taylor Library. Things do wear out, so it is fiscally responsible to know we have the means to replace them. This replacement requires thought, discussion, and community consensus. A good example is our corner pool upgrade. We selected a higher quality surface for the pool with the expectation that it would last longer. The dollars spent were above the reserve study allocation, but in the long run we will save as the next replacement will be pushed further out in the future. The reserve study is done every 3 years, and we are operating on a 2016 study that quoted a need of $1.3 million for existing reserve items, and we currently have approximately 2 to 2.1. And I acknowledge what Frank said, that in 2019 we will be doing a new study. Hence the rationale for stating that our reserves are well funded, because according to that study they were. The road paving is a 2025 issue and later. It's to be done on three consecutive years. And according to Marilyn Stout, the city of Cape Coral operates on a 30-year road lifespan rather than our studies recommending 20 to 25 lifespan. And we should adopt the same planning as the city timeline, and really our roads should experience less traffic and hopefully last longer. The problem comes in the reserve fund when you start to use these assets for unfunded new capital items and claiming that the reserve fund is also a capital fund. Aeration of the lakes and the modifications needed for the Pine Island Gate are two current examples of new capital projects we need to fund. We need to assess how our accounts are currently managed, and as a community that we feel we have a voice in the process. There are different types of projects that we must present. There are those key required projects, the must-haves, and the desired, the like-to-haves. And here are a few examples of things that I have jotted down, and that's not a complete list, of things that we need to be considering and how we're going to fund them, or are we going to do them. Number 1 is lake aeration. Number 2, Pine Island Gate modifications. Number 3, street lighting on Anguilla and Belleville. Playground, sunshade. Bathroom facilities at Calypso Park. Speed limit signs. Parking at Happy Dogs Dog Park. Pickleball courts. Hurricane relief in case we have a storm. This said, we need a procedure in place to evaluate, prioritize, and fund them. I don't think we have one right now. Required, desired, or not at all. 3 choices. Let me provide you with some facts. Using a cost figure for the complete aeration of our lakes at $500,000 and dividing it by the number of homes, 1425, the cost per family is $350. The Pine Island Gate modification project is an estimated $24,000 for one section, $27,000 for the other, with an equaling $51,000. Using the same formula, then the per family cost would be $36 each. Should we step up to the plate and pay for these needed improvements? Returning to my earlier comments on funding, the operation budget and Century Surplus Fund are both filled by HOA fees. We're paying them now. I strongly support paying for these 2 capital improvements from the CenturyLink Surplus Fund or a special assessment of all homeowners. This will preserve the integrity of our reserve fund, which is designated for maintenance and replacement items only. We are fortunate to have a backup fund with surplus dollars, but homeowners currently have no say in the utilization, and it is a lockbox with only one key holder. This fund is both a blessing and a curse. It makes us feel good that we have money going into it, but it creates an artificial barrier to the reality that all things come at a cost. Last Tuesday evening, it was stated that we need to have the entire payment for the clubhouse expansion in the bank before groundbreaking. Well, that's a direct contradiction that we were told in the presentations. That time, we were told we needed to have $1.3 million to start the project, and that the balance would be paid for in phases. So why is change in the approach? When was this ever discussed? And if we did according to the phases, we would be able to phase that payment and have the money available and fund the aeration of the lakes and get the gate fixed. All before the clubhouse expansion would be done. In summary, increasing the reserve assessment on resales by $1,000 affects both the buyer and the seller, and only those residents who are coming and going are doing the payment. Using this fund strictly for its intended purpose will ensure its health in a positive way. Let's start today with a new open discussion on funding for Sandoval and get all homeowners involved. If a vote to express community support for aeration and a Pine Island Gate modifications is appropriate, then I'm in favor of that too. What I am advocating is not a free ride for owners, but reality. This notion that the HOA fee will never rise is simply untrue. Let's utilize our funds and discuss with transparency how to fund Sandoval projects. If we want them, we need to fund them. If we don't, then we won't. The special assessment on projects fairly and equitably distributes the burden of responsibility on all demographics and is utilized effectively in most all other HOA communities. And it can work here too. I remain opposed to this unnecessary increase in the sales assessment fee from $3,000 to $4,000, and I thank you for listening to my lengthy discourse.
Don, I think you're in the wrong position. Maybe you should be treasurer.
There we reason I brought this up. And this is why the dialogue started.
The microphone is talking too loud.
Okay. Can you hear me now? One of the purposes of being treasurer, you have the financial responsibility of bringing up what you think are risks. And then with it, if you see a risk, I should be identifying what I think is a risk and then giving what I think is a possible solution. And we should have this dialogue that we're having now. That's why I asked to put it off. Don has a lot of opinions which are strong, and that's why we should be talking about it. That's why I was looking to table this for a few times. We didn't have this discussion. And maybe it's my fault. We tend to have these discussions as it's a full board. And when it is, it's in front of everybody and it's very sloppy. It should be where I sit down with one or two board members and have these discussions so we filter it out and then present it to you. But here, this is the first time I heard from Don in this way. And there could be 6 others. That's why I was saying we weren't ready to make a vote yet. There's still a lot of dialogue and a lot of difference of opinion. I strongly have a difference of opinion. When in the last meeting, when I went through why I thought this was a reasonable approach, was because we made 2 reserve contribution increases. And when we did it, no one complained much, there was no notice, and it took us from $900,000 to $2 million in our reserve fund. And it was during that same period of time where we were able to redo the pool, we were able to take care of the gates, we were able to fix the dock in Calypso Park, we got new air conditioners in here, we got new furniture at the pool. We were able to do a great deal of improvements, still stated at $2 million, which was very good. I was looking out 5 years. Joey called me and said, do you think, he had been looking at it a little further, and that's when the roads came into play. That's on the expense side. I was more concerned on the contribution side. The contribution side is, for the last 6 or 7 years, we had a good economy. And as Don said, we are totally dependent right now on this reserve fund on resales. So as long as resales are doing well, we're going to be funded well. And they have gone from 85 to 98 to 106 in 2017 and went down slightly because of the hurricane and the flood. And we're projecting 116 to 120 by the end of this year. But I know from history, I'm old enough to see the economy is going to make a turn down. It's not if, it's when. It always does. And if it does, we may, instead of having 116 resales like we have now, we may have 80 or 70. And when they drop off like that, then our contribution drops off. We got hit with a slight hurricane. That's where it went down to 101. We're at 106. So if you follow this trend, it was 85, 98, 106. You would expect 2017 to be about 111 because now 2018 it's 120. So we got impacted by 10 resales just by a slight hurricane, and it cost us $80,000 to clean it up. I mean, if we get a direct hit, it could be 6 or 7 months that we don't have any contributions. That could be 70 or 80 resales, and plus we could have $700,000 or $800,000 worth of cleanup. So there is risk here. I just wanted the community to understand the risk, understand how we're funding this. We can change it. We at 2014, we had that same decision at the time. We didn't have any surplus at the time. All we had was, we could raise the HOA, we could have made a special assessment, or we could have increased the reserve fund. We decided to increase the reserve fund. We did it looking to make sure it had no windage, no impact on resales. That's why we kept watching. If resales went down, if inventory of homes went up, or if resales of houses, if prices of houses went down. The one key thing that I said last week that I want to focus on is single-family homes in here from 2017 to 2018 went from 290 to 310. This is single-family, medium price. I mean, the median for single-family homes from 2017 to 2018 went up 20. So, I understand the point. Why people are going to argue this, and the downside is, I'm looking at things from a macro standpoint. You know, from the overall, I see we got more resales. But when you get down into the micro, there could be, if you go, we all bought and sold homes. If you get into a home, there's going to be negotiations. Say it's 310, like I just said. A person's going to come up to you, the purchaser, and he's going to say, all right, I'll give you the 310, but you eat the transfer fee. And then they're going to say, I'm not going to eat the transfer fee. I'll take 1,000. You take 1,000. Let's give the real estate agent reduce their commission. So every one of those people, they see this as their hurdle, and of course they're not going to like it. A real estate agent's going to think, hey, it's going to, you know, if I'm getting 3% of 300,000, that's 9,000. I may only get 8. The seller might say, hey, I may have to compromise, and instead of getting my 310, I may get 308 or 37. But the understanding here is they went up $20,000. So it's not like they're, you know, it's not like they're losing money. It's just their percent of the increase went down. But any case, this is a decision that anyone can make. If you don't like it, this is where the discussions are going to come in. But the point there is, there's no, as Don said, there's no free lunch. If you don't do it this way, then you're going to have to increase the HOA. If that makes you happy, that makes you happy. Or you can have a special assessment, or you can take it out of the surplus. And if you take it out of the surplus, then the risk of not having an HOA increase for 7 or 8 years is going to be reduced. But there's no free lunches. So the decision is going to be what the people think is the safest way to do it. What we're saying now is there is risk. The economy is not going to stay like this, at least in my view. And we got to discuss this. And my point is, I don't think it's resolved yet. I have a completely different view than Don. I'm not sure what the other 5 have. That's why I said, let's table it. Let's get information from the reserve assessor. Let's have all 5 people get their input. Let them talk to the residents. Let the residents have strong input. And we'll be in a much better shape in 3 or 4 months from now to make a decision that everyone wants. I wasn't looking to make a decision at that time. I was just looking to put what I thought was a risk on the table, and you put it, and that's what I feel is my fiduciary responsibility, is to say, hey, this is the risk. Everyone should understand it, and everyone should understand we got to make a decision. Let's make sure the whole residents understand what the decision is and make it happen. Listen, my mother didn't raise idiots. I'm going to be running for re-election. This is a hot topic. I knew it was a hot topic. I could have put it off to after the election. I put it off because I feel it's truly something that needs to be looked at. And as I said, whatever the result is, the result is. But we are at risk to, at least, to Mother Nature and to the economy. That's where I feel the big risk is. Me personally, raising the $1,000, think about that. The house itself went up $20,000, and resales went up. Now people are telling me we raised the other part, $1,000, and that's going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. No one will buy a house if we raise this $1,000, but the house itself went up $20,000, and people were still buying it. So I don't believe that $1,000 is critical mass, but that's me. That's 1 out of 7 people. So again, I'm thinking we should have more discussion, have people talk to the residents, and come up with it. If we want to make a decision now, hey, that's fine. It's not money out of my pocket.
Okay, just now. Okay. Well, let me just pick up on one point that Frank hit on. And I'm going to use aeration as an example. Jim Niehaus and his group, is there anybody in here from that group? Yes. Hey Jim, I'm sorry I didn't see you back there. You need to get taller. Jim has been decreeing the issues with the lakes for probably, well, the 10 years that I think he's been here and all the time that I've known him. And we finally got to a point where we felt like we need some actionable data. We needed good information. And that's exactly what Jim and the group and with Sean's help and some of the outside sources as providers have done for us. They've evaluated the basic water quality and vitality of the lakes. And there's no doubt right now that based on that data, we need to take action on the lakes. And that's the way that process evolved. It was very difficult to decide on speculation as to spending $500,000 over a period of time on something. I think if the board would do that and did it on speculation, you should have every one of us out in the street, and I'd be happy to walk out in the street if we tried to do something like that. This parallels that. There's no correct solution to this, but in order to get to a solution, we have to have the information that will tell us what are the best options that we have. We don't have those yet. And I think that Frank was very forthcoming in being first raising the issue as a caveat out there in the future. And I think it's that's what a treasurer does, and that's what a CFO does. They identify the risks and bring it to the board, and the board needs to deal with those risks. And the decisions on these kind of things aren't easy decisions, but the best information can make those, I think people recognize that it was a logical approach, and not everyone's going to agree with that. But the point is, if we go through the right process, that's correct. Now, the problem that I think that a lot of people perceive is that, to cram them. Well, we're faced with a process in which we air things in front of the open public. And it's a difficult process when you make sausage in front of the public. And it's not nice. So you're seeing a little bit of that, but we have to have a methodology for doing that. And Don had a lot of passionate ideas in that, and that's fine. That's what makes good decisions. It forces us to step forward and consider things that maybe we didn't think about or were uncomfortable in dealing with. But the point is, it brings them to the table. And Don, I commend you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you. And so basically, I think that there's a valuable lesson to be learned by all, that it's important to have the right information, that's actionable information, and done in a manner that presents it such that other people can try to understand at least why we're doing those kind of things. And I at this point, Marilyn, I'll give you the opportunity, but I would just at this point, in an abundance of caution, to make sure that Robert's rules are being properly followed, even though it was already tabled. I would entertain a motion to table it pending further information. If someone would so make that motion, unless you wanted to say something first.
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I do want to
Sure.
make a few statements, and
Well,
then if you want to.
Where's the hot mic?
Here I have it.
Okay.
First of all,
It's not.
I came onto the board in March, and so I was not part of this board when Irma hit last year. And I have heard twice that the cleanup was $80,000. I want to ask the question, was FEMA contacted?
Yeah,
Do you have a claim in?
Yeah, we were the first to apply to FEMA, and FEMA covered a lot of effort.
They have already covered your...
Yeah, they covered about $27,000, I believe, if that's the right number.
And not more?
Not more.
Because the city is expecting probably, I'm going to say 75% of what they have issued as claims, but we have not received anything yet. And I've been told it takes up to 3 years. Anyway, that was a question I just wondered if you received. I have had a lot of emails on this issue of the $1,000 increase. And, you know, when you look at 1,000, as Frank says, maybe that's not going to kill a sale, but 4,000 might. And so I'm uninclined to go along with the 4,000. In addition, I had one email that I thought made lots of the emails made sense, but there was one that particularly hit me. And that was, why should somebody that sells their home for $200,000 in excess of pay the same $4,000 as somebody that sells their home for $400,000 plus? And so consequently, maybe you need to look at it a little differently and have a percentage rather than, and I don't know what that percentage would be, and I don't even know whether it could be done. It's like asking Taylor Morrison to increase their fee from $2,000 to $3,000. When we purchased last year, we paid the $3,000, and we looked at going with Taylor Morrison in a new home. And one of my thoughts was, well, we save $1,000 if we go with Taylor Morrison and we get a new home. Problem was, we had to wait 6 or 7 months, and it didn't want to do that. So consequently, we bought a very nice home, paid the $3,000. I'm happy to live in Sandoval. I love it here. I want to be fair with everyone, and I'm just not sure, even though I know that we will have a consultant's report. I kind of look at consultant's report with skepticism, because I've now been on city council 2 different times, but a total of 5 years. There's nothing that the city manager wanted that didn't come, that he hired a consultant for that didn't come back and say what he wanted said. So I'm just a little bit skeptical. But I will be paying attention because, like the aeration, it probably shouldn't have gone on for years. It probably should have been taken, action taken sooner rather than later. It's a very important issue for all of the lakes in Sandoval. We don't want our lake, I think our lakes draw us here more than the amenities. And so consequently, we want them healthy. Now, there's been a request to table further and I don't think that having this discussion hurts anything.
Absolutely. Now, if you might, before the motion,
Sure.
I have one more point to add, and it may be a complication. Yeah, Jason, 1 second, just tell me, because I know I'm losing train of thought. There's one other issue with respect to the funding of reserves, and that is we have a legal opinion that says that the document points in the direction of 1 or 2 pathways. One is that the anticipated method is to fund on sales and resales. That is the legal opinion we received. And the only other method that is available to us is to do a direct assessment with the residents. So we'll have to investigate, if we look to modify that process, what is going to be required, because it may require a document change. All right, and we cannot just openly make a document change. We're going to have to go for a 2/3 vote on that. So that's an issue that's out there, and I think before we process judgment, that's another thing to be considered as to whether or not we can do it today or do it at some other time. Jason, let's.
Yes, I just wanted to say, first of all, thanks for the information, Don. Thanks for the information, Frank. I mean, you put together some good information last week. It's unfortunate, but I think most of these people in here came today thinking we're going to make some kind of decision along with myself. I reached out to a few different residents around the neighborhood over the last couple weeks, and I haven't found one person that is for the increase. So I was hoping we were voting on it tonight, but I guess not. It's unfortunate, but I have to say, if we did vote on it tonight, I could not vote for it.
Anyone else? Okay. Do we have a motion to?
I'll make a motion to table until the report comes in from the consultant.
Yeah, and plus a little bit of time for us to evaluate, and we need to have some internal review.
How long?
Yeah, probably 2 or 3 weeks. I would think.
2 or 3 weeks after and then everyone will be notified, and everybody will have the chance to speak on the issue.
Yeah, and I don't know what legal ramifications we have to run that trail too, but we should certainly be able to do that. So do you want to repeat the motion so that we get it correct? So.
All right, the motion is to table the issue on the $1,000 increase to reserves until the consultant's report returns, and then allowing 3 weeks for the board to discuss and the residents to be informed.
Okay, and based, just so we're clear on that, a board discussion will be done on less than quorum basis, and it has to be done that way, or else we'll have to have a meeting where we're discussing it, and you won't even know what we're thinking about yet, and it will be discussed there, so we'll have to have that process, so just full disclosure on that. Okay, is there a second? All right, we got a first and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. It's tabled until, as the resolution said. And with respect to that, to take action on it, Sean, if you would go ahead and contact reserve advisors and find out when they might be able to implement it and their expectations on completion, and then we'll set the calendar for that. Yeah.
When they come here, besides the finance committee, I more than welcome any board member or anyone else to go around and come up with this information. I want this totally transparent. And the one thing that I think that just went by is I think we really do need this a little more discussion, because everyone does have an opinion and it wasn't really shared with each other. And that's why I was really asking for it to be held off a little bit. It wasn't like for any other reason, just to get the full discussion going.
Okay, now, we have to work, anybody else? Okay. We have to work toward, I don't need two, do I? Hear an echo. We have to come up with that executive session for next week and at latest the following Monday, so I'll try and get back to you also. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Wait, what about the comments?
Second?
What about resident comments?
We did that at the last board meeting, you know. This is a continuation of that board meeting, I'm sorry, so.
Well, the continuation, maybe. It's a continuation.
Continuate that, continue that.
Fine, I mean, I'm fine if anybody wants to speak. If you would, please, raise your hand and we'll go around and do it. Anyone wishing to speak?
Joe, why don't you tear the paper out and you put it over there?
I thought that was on ARC.
On topics that we were discussing.
Is it on? Chris Bechtel, on the $1,000.
Mr. Kilrain. I am Chris Bechtel out of the 2629 Brightside Court, and actually I think that with the discussion that's going on with the board this afternoon, perhaps many of the things that I wanted to say could probably wait. But I did think of one thing as I was sitting here, and that is that I think when you're gathering information, I think, and I understand that that is, you want to get more information of, it sounds like a financial sort, but I think that the information that I would like to urge you to weigh the most is the opinions of the people in the community. And because my understanding is that every board member is a representative of the community. And so I think that you might want to take very seriously and look at the poll that was on homeowners and the homeowners group page, and I think the numbers were really like, how many in favor of this assessment? 3. How many opposed? 228. I mean, it really I think you need to know that this is not, you know, the community's willingness, I think, has to be a big part of the decision. And also, I think that whenever decisions are made like this, and I think that I would welcome, as a homeowner, focus groups. When a board would call people in that are interested in the topic and let them share their opinions and gather information before just hitting us with it. Okay, I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Chris.
I turned it off.
And Mr. Craig Snyder.
I'd just like to comment first about the comment Sean made about the disruption at the last meeting on Tuesday. During the public forum part of that meeting, there were no problems. The meeting got out of hand when the chair let the meeting get out of hand. Robert's Rule of Order state that you have a public forum in order to let the public express. After that, there is no communication between the board and the people in the audience. And at that time, that's when things got bad. That goes back to the chair. Concerning the $1,000, I also am against that, but a lot of things that I have here have already been said. But one thing I was going to say is that I live in the condos, and that $4,000 on a $160,000 to a $200,000 condo makes a lot of difference than if you're working on a $400,000 house. So an answer or response to your comment about a percentage or something that's more fair, I think that should be looked into at the utmost time. Also, a lot of things have been already said. One thing about the question and answer thing that I'd like to see Sean write down what our questions are and our comments and answer them in the eyes and ears. Give us an answer. Tell us what we want to know. We ask questions, we respond in the public forum. We get no response back from the board or from Sean. I'm all about capitalism, and I'm all about making money. And I'm also about democracy. Sandoval needs an association of all the people, not just run by a select few.
Thank you.
To answer your question too, I will have a GM meeting specific to budget questions, because there's a lot of questions that I get via things, and it allows you the opportunity to ask anything that you want there, and I'll get you the answer on it. Tom Robertson.
Tom Robertson. I'd like to add this in going from that to what I see as another potential opportunity for us to not get along with one another, and that is our surplus. I think we need to identify how we're going to work through that in the future. And if I'm hearing we need a capital side beside the reserve side, so that we have a capital budget to do things that we don't know what they are today, that we will have money going in there in a systematic way, so that when that capital project comes up and we need to vote on it, it either does or does not have the funding.
John.
Thanks, Tom.
Mrs. Joan Vermeer.
My name is Joan Vermeer. I live out in Maleta Court, and there's been lots of good discussion today, but in the past, I think that's been missing. So I have several things that I would like to address. I apologize, but I'm going to read. It's just, I don't want to miss anything. First, although I realize that the Board of Directors has the authority to approve the budget, you represent the community and should care about us. It concerns me that at the October board meeting, you told us that our community had an excellent financial position, even continuing into the future. Then, with only a two-week notice, which I again recognize as according to bylaws, you indicated the need to increase our, what I call a transfer fee, but the fee that's would go up by $1,000. But you didn't provide any background or any reason for it. You also provided us extremely limited information about the budget. I've lived in other homeowner associations before, and I've never received a proposed budget from a board without also receiving a copy of the financials showing the actual money spent and received for the current year. Second, your message to us as homeowners is that the $1,000 increase will be borne by the buyer. However, that is misleading. Fees like that are negotiable items in the sale of a home. I'm a former realtor, so I work very closely with that. It can be paid by either the buyer or the seller. In addition, it is a consideration when determining the sale price of a home. Not all homeowners are aware of details like that, and they rely on your information, which was disappointingly deceptive. Third, the lakes are a critical piece of our community. The fact that we have not appropriately, am I standing in a bad place with a horrible rain? Are you all getting that rain?
Yeah, that's okay. Just a little bit, but it's not really overcoming. It's
Okay.
fine.
The fact that we have not appropriately addressed their maintenance in the past is sad, but we must move ahead regardless. With our warmer seasons, their viability will only become more precarious. I slept with my windows open last night, and it was ominously quiet outside. In the past, I would hear critters all night long. So I'm very concerned about the future plans for the well-being of our lakes. Fourth, there are other ways to address the lake issue. With an assessment of only $350 per home in 1 year or $175 in 2, we could pay the estimated $500,000 needed for the aeration project. Then the dues could return to the regular amount. At $350 per home, it is less than $100 a quarter. There are several other ways to look at that, and we've heard some good suggestions already. Perhaps the condos pay less because I understand that their lake is already aerated, but this just points out that there are alternatives. And by the way, with the transfer fee that you recommended, it would take 5.5 years to fund the lakes projects. Too long. Finally, I'm discouraged by the lack of interest by this board to hear from residents. I contacted board members by email because you don't list a phone number for anybody with my concerns before last Tuesday's meeting. I was able to speak with 3 members, Al Roper, Don Wells, and Molly Knox. No one else cared enough to get back with me. How sad is that? I can hardly believe that you only have an email address and no phone number for us to contact you, our representatives. What kind of association is this? I moved to Sandoval because it's a beautiful community. I have found the people here to be warm and kind. It is a place I like to live. I am involved. I've accepted becoming a neighborhood liaison. I'm serving on the amenities committee, so I want to give back. My Sandoval political opinions have not been shared with the people on my street where I'm the neighborhood liaison because I don't want to try to influence somebody else, but I just think we always need to have more additional time and consideration for our projects.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Jim Swigert. All right, saved us some time. Mrs. Melanie Palmer.
Yeah. So a lot of everything has pretty much been said. I guess my only outstanding question is I hope that, just from the comments today, that you do realize there's a lot of residents that are very concerned about this. It isn't something to be done lightly, so, you know, we hope that you listen to the feedback. And then my other question is, with Molly not here, is somebody taking minutes, and when will they be available? Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Marlene Douglas.
I too am against the $1,000 increase. I see another part of it is we need to fix the lakes. It wasn't expected that it would be so expensive. Perhaps now is the time for us to look at the things that are going to be done and see, are they all necessary? Are some of them just nice? Because really as residents, we don't get that much input on the things that are purchased or decided, amenities, whatever. And I think it's time to start looking at that aspect too.
because all families have unexpected increases, and what do? They see what they can cut out. Thank you.
I want to do one comment myself. The one thing that I am happy about is that we go through differing opinions, but when we talk today, we had a great talk. This was, I wish this would have happened prior. This was nice. That you had varied opinions. You have people for, people against. But as we went through, you try. It's hard to try to prioritize the number of things that you have. Just like Marlene said, that you've got 10 or 12 things on there that you're trying to give an approval for, or trying to find out the long-term objective. But the one thing that we all have agreed on is the lakes. The lakes, Jim Niehaus has said this for I don't know how long, but why hasn't it happened? Well, you've been under declarant control. Declarant's not going to spend $500,000 on a lake. That's not going to happen that you have that. But we've done the studies. We sent all of the board the muck samples so that you can actually see the trophic state of the lakes, and you start to think long-term. And I think the funding source is less important as to the fact that this thing gets put on the top of it. Yeah. And as a GM, I just want to make it as a note that I highly endorse the lakes, the aeration on it, as a top priority going into 2019.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. One more point with respect to the lakes. The issue we're talking about is lake water quality and vitality. There's another issue of the erosion problem on the lakes. That's something that we have a little bit in the reserves to be able to do continual maintenance that was never done under Taylor Morrison. We're pursuing Taylor Morrison in legal action with respect to that. And just one other comment with respect to the, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, the lady back there who brought up about being misled about our financial condition. In the short term, we are in excellent shape with respect to the financials. What Frank was relating to, and what is a treasurer's and CFO's function, is to look out in time and discover those kind of things that could come up and bite us in the tail. And that's what he's done. So by having it way out in time, it gives us the luxury of using time to be able to plan and approach methodology so that we can gradually get to that place where we're not going to have a problem that's going to be drastic. And that's, if we were looking at what the requirements are from either a statute standpoint or what the Reserve Advisor state for today and into the next 1 or 2 budget cycles, we're in great shape. But let's not be fooled by that, because 7 or 8 years coming down the road, if you apply some of the new inflation rates, we could be in deep trouble. So let's figure out what that needs to be and figure out the right approach to getting there. And there's a lot of ways to get there. We may have to do some things in changing documents to be able to fund it a different way, but that's all doable if we decide that that's the right thing to do. First, we need information to know exactly what it is. The comments with respect to base assessment increases, that was assuming that we looked at central and surplus that was available after the expansion. And if you just run the numbers, you would have no base assessment increase potential for 9 years. That's assuming no other things happen. And that's not a great assumption, because something's going to happen. We're going to have a downturn in the economy, we're going to have another storm, we're bound to have it. So we need to be prepared for that. But that was just a way of communicating that. We're on the good side of that, on the good side of the equation here. It's a good problem to have, trying to figure out how best to get your money out. So, Bill Browning had a question.
Hi, I'm Bill Browning. I was your board member for many years, 7 alone. I want to correct a statement that's been made up there 3 times, that the pool money comes out of reserves. That comes from Taylor Morrison, and we better be pursuing that.
Excuse me, Bill, just to clarify, there's a claim against Taylor Morrison in our claim on the crack in the pool. Now, the crack in the pool is a portion of what's happening out there. It hasn't been determined what that cost is, but that crack is probably a lot less than what that pool overall resurfacing has been. I know it is. The amount of capital
I don't think that was pointed out to the residents before that was done.
Well, I'm sorry, it was, Bill. We talked about what this was. We talked about pursuing the claim. So both of those things were done. And did you think that they were gonna resurface the entire pool?
I thought they were gonna correct the problems in the pool.
Oh, they're gonna correct the crack in the pool. That's what we're pursuing them with. We don't even know if we can get that out of them. We're gonna try. But if you think that the crack in the pool had anything to do with the resurfacing, that just isn't accurate.
One more thing. Okay. I can talk about it. We have a fountain here in this lake. Have you tested the water quality in this lake to find out the aeration or whatever?
Yeah.
You can prove that that's helped this lake.
This is not, it's not an aerator. There's two different
Oh, okay.
things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify,
That's a fountain.
because a lot of people think of that, I often call it an aerator. That's really a water feature.
Okay.
And what it does, it's an inefficient way of adding oxygen to the lake. It's like maybe 5% efficient as what an aerator, the same force capacity would do. What you do in an aerator, you're pumping air into the bottom of the lake, and that air has a lot of oxygen, and it turns the lake. It actually prevents the striation. And the way a lake dies, it usually dies at the bottom first, where you start getting low levels of oxygen, and your oxygen level goes up toward the surface. And as Jim will tell you, and Jim can speak better to this than I can, there are 3 techniques by which that you naturally introduce oxygen to a lake. One is the surface condition of the lake. The other is if it's a lake with flow through, where you continually are replacing that water based on flow through. And then artificial means that you may have just a general surface exchange between the surface and not the winds. In our case, we have stable lakes with not a lot of flow through, so that's gone. So we're a little bit behind the 8 ball already. Once you put them in, they start dying, and they die from the bottom. We now have data that says they're dying at the bottom, so we need to do something. And the aerators go in and they turn the lakes, and it gives you lake turnover and dissipates that oxygen, so it's an easier thing. So a little bit longer explanation, you need it?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Gary Keller. I live on Somerville Loop. I don't need a mic because usually everybody tells me to quiet down. I want to see a lake that has done a fantastic job. I was here left in April, and Somerville Lake on the Loop looked like it was having problems. We had algae and stuff. I came back 3 weeks ago. That lake looks 150% better than before. It's got the growth on the edges to keep the stuff where it's supposed to be. But those 3 aerators were having issues last year, and it's looking very good this year since we built those aerators.
Another option, I just thought of this that I'll share with you now. And I'm not making this decision, but I'll tell you it's an option. We're talking about funding of the lakes. If we were to put the lakes right in the reserve pool right now, we're overfunded reserves right now by $1 million. There would be no problem going at that hell's bells as fast as we want. We got to figure out how to replace that money, but there's money available to do that. And it's the right thing to do because it's a capital item. We have a legal position on that it should be part of the lakes reserve deal. So, I mean, the actual implementation of that doesn't have to wait. We can put it right in reserves and go with it. And the same thing on the gates. We have an issue on a feature in the reserves that covers gates and roads. We can put it in there. But when you're doing that, you've got to remember you're increasing that asset burden that someday will be another part of that big nut to take care of further in years. So you got to plan for that. But there's nothing preventing us from doing what we have to do right now. There's no reason for any real assessment out there right now on anyone. The real issue is how do we take care of it from now and 7 years from now? And that's the concern, and that's what Frank very well pointed out. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's...
Is that the one that works?
One of the points that I was trying to make is that, I want the reserves to stay healthy, and, to artificially turn it into a capital fund is not going to allow that to happen, and then it's going to have to be funded for something else.
Sorry.
So, I think that, there's not been any discussion that we need to utilize CenturyLink surplus funding for any of this thing, and I think we need to address that. That's where our hang up here in our community is, that we've got this, but it seems to be untouchable unless it's released by the key holder. And I think that it's important that we either address that as a source for capital funding, or it's done away with so that we can work like a regular HOA. If we need to have the lakes done, we special assess it, we do it, and then we move on to the next item. And if it's not popular, we don't do it. So I think that stealing all this out of the reserve, even though you have a legal opinion, and how did you get the legal opinion, and now all of a sudden the only way to fund the reserve is through the assessment of these people buying homes, I don't know where that all came from. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if the reserves get to the point that we don't have the money, we'll have to be special assessed to fill the reserve. So, and it's amazing the multiplier here for $500,000 at $350 each. You know, we can make things pretty healthy pretty quick. Not that we won't need to do that every day, but addressing this is, it's in the reserve and you're not going to have to pay. I think we're missing the boat here.
I'm going to make one more point. I'm going to make sure Sean has my phone number out. During this process, I would love to sit down with small groups of residents, 5 or 6, if they would like to, and get their opinions and rehash these things, to actually see what their concerns are, and have, you know, a spirited debate on different things, so everyone understands it. So again, I will make sure my phone number is out there, and any kind of, if they want to respond to Sean, you know, as far as sitting down in small groups that we can discuss this, I'll be happy to do that.
And I think where we got here today was a preponderance of concern to look out further in time and figure out where the surprises were going to be. And that's done in a proactive manner, and I thank Frank for putting the effort in to do that. He started the discussion. One more in the back, and we're going to get killed because they're ready to eat turkey, and we're going to get eaten if we don't get out of here soon.
Oh, wow.
Jack Clark, I live on Ashford. I just have a basic question. You've been talking about this $350 assessment. What does it take to do that right now, today?
Well, we have to, let's see, another assessment. Let me think about how the documents work.
We keep talking about 3 different options and all that, and people are saying this assessment of $350 is brought up. It's $100, you know, a quarter or whatever it is. It's chump change comparable to talk. We're wasting more time talking about this. It's $350 per homeowner. What is the deal? Who can make that decision?
The reason we were discussing about a $1,000 increase was looking long-term with the roads coming up and with a bunch of other things.
Different issue.
It wasn't just this specifically.
It's a different issue.
Different issue. I'm just talking about right now today. If we wanted to do this aeration, which everybody talks about the lakes, get on it and do it.
Yeah, let's, first of all, what we have to do is how it's going to process. We only know a little bit about it. We don't have all the numbers yet. It's been estimated. We got phase 1, I think, that's defined by two vendors, and all the lakes are going to be a little bit different. So we don't even know what that number is. So let's go to the trough. Like time we have to go to the trough.
As far as, does the board allocate that and say, okay,
The board has the authority to do a special assessment at any time. We can do it at any board meeting. We have to announce that there will be an assessment consideration at that board meeting. We have to give at least 14 days notice of that board meeting, and that assessments will be part of that discussion and the decision made on it.
You want to do this in steps, like we talked about. We're going to do 3 lakes or 5 lakes, just like that. Can you start that soon?
Sure. Well, as soon as we get the vendor all ready and ready to go, and we get enough, we need it. We need to probably make sure that technically it's the right thing to do, that's the right vendor to do. We haven't had that discussion yet among the board too, and we need that presented to us so that we can decide upon that. And then that's the first piece, and then funding it is how we'll figure out next. So, okay. Thank you all. I'm sorry we have to go. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Oh, we did. We're after. All right.